Inside the Arena is presented by Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel, Seattle's closest sportsbook.
Welcome to Inside the Arena, your source for everything off the ice, off the court, and outside the field of play. With your hosts, KOMO Sports Director Niko and KOMO Senior Reporter Chris Daniels.
That's right. Back for episode 49 straight weeks off the court, off the ice, off the field of play in a different format this week because we have an off-the-field situation. Bill Fesh and I here in the booth. My good friend Niko Tamurian, KOMO Sports Director, is out right now. And you know what? That means I have nobody to play off of, Bill, except the sound effects. But we can't do a full show of just sound effects, can we? No, we've got to do a full show with actual content, and we do have a lot of content. You're going to hear from Niko, who did a great, and I'm telling you, great interview with the Sundell siblings. There's a really unique story that's developing in Seattle with both the Seattle Storm and the Seattle Seahawks. And also in this show, an old friend of mine, we go way back, Patrick Brown, who is the Kraken Hockey Network director. He just finished up the first full season as a Kraken employee. He has great insight on what it has been like to build that organization from the ground up, meaning the TV product, what you have seen throughout the year as the Kraken have gone out on their own and gone over the air. He talks at length about a special story, the first goal for one of the rookies of the Kraken and what went into that and what his viewpoint of it was when he was off the ice in the booth directing the game. So I think you're going to enjoy hearing from Patrick Brown later on in this show. But first, we're still going to try and do it even without Niko. It's what we always like to do every week. What's good, what's bad, off the ice, off the court, off the field of play. It's four corners. I can tell you I can only cover two bases because I don't have Niko. So I'll tell you what's good is that the Seattle Storm already had their first exhibition game, and we can report the ratings are up. The television ratings are up. So far, so good. Of course, full disclosure, the Seattle Storm are a broadcast partner of KOMO TV, and that exhibition game seen on KOMO and on Seattle's CWKUNS. It's going to be an exciting season as they get underway. Malonga, now their first overall pick, the second overall, I should say, in the WNBA draft. She is now with the Storm and practicing. I think a lot of people are going to be excited, especially with their first home game right around the corner as well. And I just got to say the bad thing this week, the crickets that we hear. Niko, not in the studio with us, the official Inside the Arena studio here at KOMO Television, but he will be back, and he's still going to be with us here because he's got a great story with the Sundell siblings, as I mentioned off the top, this unique story that has developed that involves both the Seattle Storm and the Seattle Seahawks, and you are going to hear it and hear from Niko right after this break.
Luxury awaits at Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel, where comfort meets elegance. This summer, experience breathtaking cascade views, world-class dining, and play your favorite games. Elevate your next getaway by combining effortless style with the utmost relaxation. Seattle's closest is now Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel.
Everything we did in our family was competitive.
For Jalen and Serena Sundell,
whether it was a board game or March Madness tournament,
competition is in their DNA.
That was just the nature of our family, was competitiveness from when we were very young.
Molding their character, it's just part of who they are.
And our punishments were doing hills. we had to go run hill sprints.
So like,
we get in trouble.
Didn't do a chore or something like that?
Yeah, you'd have to go run a hill sprint. So.
But it helped these special siblings forge a path, one not often seen at this level. You see, Jalen went on to play football at Powerhouse North Dakota State. Then it was Serena starring on the basketball court at Kansas State. And how about last year when Jalen got the call to the NFL with our Seahawks.
I was super excited for him last year, and Seattle seemed pretty far away.
Oh, but Seattle was closer than Serena could have ever imagined, ever dreamed in the wildest of scenarios, because this year Serena's college career ended and the WNBA draft came calling.
Seattle didn't have a lot of high picks, so we were not expecting, Serena to come to Seattle.
Come third round and see Seattle pop up, it was one of those things, everything was happening so fast.
As it got later and Seattle was on the board, we were just praying. We saw it announced and we were just screaming, me and my wife at home.
I'm really going to go out to Seattle and be with my family, and it was exciting, so I'm so happy about how everything worked out.
That's right, 2 siblings, 2 sports at their pinnacle, 1 city as their playground.
It's really surreal to think that we're in the same city and playing at the highest level is pretty crazy.
I agree. Just knowing our journeys and our paths and how we both ended up in the same city is pretty special.
And what they're most proud of, giving their family, their parents, the absolute thrill of living out this dream. They would play pickup basketball in the driveway back home in Marysville, Missouri. Dreams flying like a high-arcing three-point shot. Dreams of making it. It's hard to imagine even a dream could have conjured what happened in real life. And so no matter what comes in the years ahead, Jalen and Serena Sundell's competition continues in the pros now with the story of a lifetime.
Our mom is over the moon. I want to say our dad isn't a super emotional person, but you can tell that he is super happy. Now to have both their children out here, I know they are just the happiest people alive right now.
It's a really cool story, and obviously that story is still being written right now. I think it'll be a cool story to tell and to our kids.
So there you have it. Great piece by Niko. We're going to be watching them both, the siblings, here throughout the year, both on the court and on the field. Speaking of on the court, one thing we always like to do every week here, it's the Supersonic Minute. That, of course, is the air horn that they'll be playing at the games when the Supersonics finally come back. There's not a whole lot of news on the off-the-court business dealings and the NBA and where that discussion is right now. We know we've heard from the commissioner about potentially a discussion later this summer. But there was some interesting Seattle-related NBA news here in the past week, and it is good. For the second week in a row, really, we are talking about somebody from Seattle becoming a full-time NBA head coach. We talked about Doug Christie, the Rainier Beach great, now getting the full-time gig with the Sacramento Kings. And in the last week, Greg Popovich, who was the San Antonio Spurs head coach for nearly 3 decades, stepped down due to complications from a stroke. And the Spurs have now officially named Mitch Johnson as the new head coach. And it is a great story if you are a fan of basketball and from Seattle, as Mitch is the son of John Johnson, JJ, from the 1979 Supersonics NBA championship team. He went to O'Day High School. He was an all-stater, all-Metro League, went to Stanford. After Stanford, went into coaching, was at Seattle U for a little bit, AAU circuit in Seattle. He has worked his way through the ranks and has now been given the full-time job to replace Greg Popovich down in San Antonio. He had that interim title through the last season that just wrapped up. And so it was great to see Mitch down at that press conference with support from Spencer Hawes, who still lives in Seattle, played with him growing up here in Seattle, and he went down to congratulate Mitch in person and be there for the big announcement. Mitch Johnson, the new head coach of the San Antonio Spurs, and really a relation to the Supersonics in this Supersonic Minute, as he, again, is the son of JJ, the great John Johnson, from the 1979 Supersonic championship team. All right, now we switch gears to hockey, the Kraken Hockey Network. Patrick Brown, the lead director for those Kraken Hockey Network broadcasts through the season. You're going to hear him talk about what it has taken to build that process, build that program up from the ground floor, from the ice level, and then how those games are produced so when he has that moment in time, he can hit the right buttons and tell a story as well. You're going to hear from him immediately after the break.
Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel's award-winning outdoor summer concert series is back. See amazing artists like Hanson, Austin Jenks, Melanie Fiona, and POD this summer overlooking the beautiful Snoqualmie Valley. Visit snowcasino.com for tickets. Seattle's closest is now Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel.
All right, Patrick, thanks for doing this and going inside the arena, because I think you do have some good insight into what's going on at the arena.
Well, I'm happy to be here. It's good to reconnect.
Yes. Full disclosure, a couple of Cougs here went to school together, and we've both worked in television locally here now for years. So it's great to feature what you're doing there, Patrick. I guess for the broader audience, let's start by how'd you get started into directing live sports broadcasts?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's something that I've kind of always wanted to do, even as far back as college, working for the sports video crew and helping out, doing games there, and knowing that directing was what I wanted to do, but not quite sure knowing how to do it, how to get there. So I actually started out directing local news. I worked in Medford and Spokane for a number of years, and the big break really happened, strangely, when Gonzaga became a brand. The station I was at in Spokane got the rights to televise Gonzaga games, and they came to me and said, "Hey, do you want to produce these games?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." And so in 2000-ish, 2001, I started producing the Gonzaga games for local TV. And producing and directing are two very different skills, but they both are leading the production. And so over the years, I started to sort of make some contacts over here in Seattle at what was then known as Fox Sports Northwest. And after a few years, was able to make the big leap out of local news into working at Fox Sports Northwest. And they wanted somebody to direct studio shows, but somebody who they could, see becoming a game director at some point. And that was what I really wanted to do. And so I think it was in October of 2003 I came across and started directing their studio shows. And by December of 2003, I directed my first game, which was the Oregon High School Football Championship. And for some reason, they gave me like 6 hours of air and said, "Go direct these games." I directed 2 games back to back, and it was a leap of faith for everybody to just like throw me in the chair. But it was a good experience, and here I am.
Well, and you're a humble guy. I know. I'll just toot your own horn. I've seen you on the Emmy stage, winning awards. You've done a great job through all these years, and it's been fun watching how your career has developed and grown since you jumped on that Gonzaga bus so many years ago. So Fox turns into Prime turns into Fox, turns into Root. What was that transition like? How many games overall were you doing at Root, would you say, on any given year?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that never changed at that place was constant change. It was always changing, and that was great. I'm a person who likes to keep moving and trying new things. At that time, we were doing a lot of Pac-12 events, Pac-10 even back then. So I started off doing a lot of Husky and Cougars and Beavers basketball and football. Eventually worked my way into pregame shows for Mariners, pregame shows for Sonics. And one of the toughest things in my career ever was, the last year of the Sonics, I directed about 16 Sonics games. Oof. And the executive producer at the time said, "You be ready. Next year, you're going to do half the season." And I was like stoked. I got to go on one Sonics road trip that last year. And I was like, I'm going to be the next Sonics director. It's going to be awesome. And then they left town. And it was like this, this hole in my heart for an 82 game season team and a winter team. Just all cards on the table. Eventually the Mariners bought the network, and that was good for everybody. But I'm not a baseball guy. It's like the only sport that I'm not a big fan of directing baseball, because the little background on that is it's the only sport where the scoring occurs away from the ball. And it's hard for me to wrap my head around that sometimes. I didn't grow up playing baseball.
Yeah.
I was not a little league kid, so it's not intuitive. So long story short, I did do a fair number of Mariners games over the years as a fill-in. When we lost the Sonics and we lost the Pac-10, that was a little nerve-wracking, but we filled it in with the Big Sky Conference football, which we were able to, leverage that into basically being the national broadcast for Big Sky football. And we put out really big shows. We had a lot of cameras and a lot of technology, and we kind of blew people away with that. At the same time, MLS was starting to fire up in the region, and so I started directing Portland Timbers. And so for like the first 11 years of the Portland Timbers, I directed all of their games on Root Sports. So that was kind of my first big package of doing games where I was like the guy for a long time. And that was really cool and getting to know those folks. But as soon as we started hearing rumors about hockey, I was like, man, that would be really, really cool to do that. And so when we were fortunate enough at Root Sports to partner with the Kraken for that first season, I really took it very seriously. I actually see a lot of similarities in rhythms between soccer and hockey, and so it wasn't that big of a jump for me. But our network, to their credit, really put the resources in to do it right. Especially compared to what we see around the country with some of the other local deals. We put out a lot of cameras and a lot of technology, much like what we always have at Root Sports. So for the first 3 years, it was great traveling with the team, doing all the games. And then we started to hear that maybe that relationship was going to come to an end. And so right about this time last year, in fact, I was kind of offered a choice. The Kraken were going to go off and start their own thing, and no guarantees at Root Sports that there was going to be another thing. And so I made the leap of faith, and it's been the greatest decision I've ever made. This is an amazing, amazing place to work, with all due respect to the people I worked with over at Root, who I adore and love and still keep in touch with. After 21 years there, it was time to make a change. And so here we are making our own network over here at the Kraken, and it's been great.
So you are a Kraken employee now, correct?
Yes.
So what has that been like, building this almost from the ground up? You're using a lot of the same people that were working at Root, including yourself. What has that been like, just building this out internally under the Kraken umbrella now?
Yeah, I mean, we brought 5 people across that had worked at Root Sports. So Ryan Shaber, who is my boss and our producer, myself, Scott Malone, who is our pre-intermission and post producer, Stu Vatu, who's an editor and is the wizard with all of that enhanced telestration type stuff, makes all the cool graphics during the intermissions and the pre's and the post. And then Piper Shaw, our reporter, came across too. So it's been good to sort of been surrounded by that family. But on the other hand, coming into a place, first of all, have been a partner of teams for years, but never really understood how internally a team works. So it was a big learning curve for me. But also we spent, last summer, essentially from May till September, first off, teaching people internally what a broadcast network does, because they didn't know. And then really working with our creative team to create an entirely fresh graphics package. As far as I know, last year when we went on the air, we were the only team in the league that was doing our own broadcast with our own completely independent creative graphics package, our own music, our own everything. And so it was a real sprint to the finish line to get on the air last year to launch that look and feel, while we are also engaging with mobile truck units and hiring trucks and working with crewers to make sure that we have all the bodies in place on the freelance side that we want to have for the home games and the road games, and making sure our transmission paths are all set up so that we can get the signals around the country. So it was a big lift. Last summer was a real heavy sprint, but we're really proud of what we came up with.
Yeah. How many people would you say are involved in any particular telecast? How many cameras in any particular telecast?
Yeah, we have 13 camera operators for 14 cameras on our games. So one person runs the 2 little robotic cameras that are in the dasher boards at the ice level. And she goes back and forth between whichever end of the ice the action is on. And then everybody else just runs one camera. There's a total of about 60 people on the crew between the pregame and the game and all the other stuff that's going on. It's a really big production.
And when you're directing, if it's a road versus home game, where are you during the course of a game? Are you inside the arena at the control room they have there? Are you out in a truck? How does that differ versus road versus away?
Yeah, so in both places, I'm in a mobile unit. It's a TV truck trailer that gets dragged around from city to city and place to place. And we have one particular unit that we use for all the home games in Seattle. And then on the road, we're kind of at the mercy of the deals that the home teams have made. And so each arena kind of has essentially a monopoly. And so we have to engage with the decisions that they've made. And there's only three or four, there's four big mobile TV companies in North America. And so we have a relationship with all four of them. And we order them up and say, hey, we're going to be in Edmonton tomorrow night. So we call up Dome, who's in Canada, and we arrange for a truck to be there and an engineer, and then we hire a crew and we're there. So in either place, I'm in the truck talking to the announcers on their headsets. And what I always tell people is if you ever want to find the TV truck, just go find the dumpsters because we're right next to that.
I've seen them many times in the back of T-Mobile Park down by those dumpsters. So yes. I don't think people realize, I mean, this is not like you're showing up right at puck drop and saying, hey, we're going to do this and do this. I mean, how many hours are you there before in advance of a game and after a game?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one with hockey specifically just because of the rhythms of how a hockey team operates. And so on a regular game of any sort, just generically, the crew call is typically 6 hours before the game. So that's when our camera people are showing up, our technical directors and all that kind of stuff. On a hockey game, because we have some equipment that takes a little extra time to get installed and it's ice dependent, usually it's really a 7-hour crew call. So we're starting to have some technicians arrive 7 hours. But we also have this thing called morning skate in hockey. And so we like to come and watch the morning skate where the players come and do a light workout. And we kind of get a preview of who the starters are going to be and who's going to play together. And so really that morning skate on the road can occur anytime between 10:30 and 11:30, depending on what the home team's plan is. So we'll say 11 o'clock as a good sort of average. So really we're leaving the hotel at 10:30, getting to the arena at 11 a.m. and staying all the way until a 7 o'clock puck drop, and then stay until 10:30 before we get out of there. So they're 12-hour days.
Long days, especially when on a cold Calgary or Edmonton night, I'm assuming.
Winnipeg. I think what you meant was Winnipeg.
So you just talked about being there for morning skate. And one of the things that I appreciate in any sort of broadcast is when you're able to tell that people have done their research and figured out storylines through the game and the backstories on particular players, especially the opponents. When do you have those production meetings? When do you start kind of mapping that out in your mind about, okay, I need to make sure I have a camera on so-and-so tonight?
Yeah, with this group, because there's so many games in a season, we're doing at least 70 to 72, 73, because we lose a few with national TV exclusives. It's less of a formal meeting and more of a conversation that just constantly evolves. But at the end of morning skate, typically our producer and the announcers will have a more, in-depth listen. This is what we think we want to talk about tonight. But the important thing to remember is that at 11:30 in the morning, things will change throughout the day. And so nothing is ever locked into stone. Nothing is ever like, this is how we're coming on the air until we come on the air. And you never know when somebody's going to go back to the hotel and eat something and get sick, or somebody's wife's going to go into labor and they're going to hop on a plane and fly away. And so one of the things that we are as a group I think we're very good at is being able to sort of improvise on the fly and tell those stories as they're happening. But all that being said, we still got to have a plan. And so that post morning skate conversation with the talent and the producers, that's really going to set the tone for the day. And to be clear, it's really the announcers and the producers that are making those decisions, and I'm along for the ride. And that's not to say that from time to time I won't have an idea and speak up, but my job is more to take what their ideas are and execute them as best as I can and figure out the best way. So, if I'm listening to them talk and they're talking about a player that's had a good career in Calgary when we're playing there, they've scored a few goals there in the last few years. That's my kind of cue to go, okay, well, I better make sure that we're watching that person when he's out on the ice. And so I'm going to make sure that we've got a camera dedicated to that person, that player when they're out on the ice.
And that's all a setup because I think you told a great story on social media about Yanni Newman and his first game in a Kraken uniform. I happened to be in the bowl that night. The goal was scored right in front of me, and I knew that was his first goal, but you had been preparing for that moment in multiple ways to try and capture the energy at Climate Pledge Arena and have the right angle, not only on the goal, but his family. Walk me through what that was like in the preparation for that particular game.
That was a very satisfying ending to a couple days of planning because, the rumors on social started to crop up a few days before. I think we had been off for a couple days, and there was sort of this, hey, Yanni Newman might be getting called up, or we might be bringing him up from Coachella, and he'd been having an unbelievable year in Coachella Valley. So we knew that this was a player that we want to keep an eye on and that is probably going to be important to the future of the team. And so I start to think, there's a little bit of a playbook, like, okay, a new player's coming. What are we going to do? What do we need to do to cover that? And is that player's parents going to be here? Because that's a very common thing. But I didn't know coming from Europe. But sure enough, I think the day before it was official that he was called up. So I start working with our PR team. Hey, the parents coming. Where are they going to sit? They were able to immediately find out that, yep, they're coming across, and here's where they're going to be sitting. Fortunately for me, they were sitting in a position where we were able to see them with our cameras easily, which is not always the case, especially on the road. There are times where we just don't have enough cameras that we control to be able to dedicate a camera to something like that. So in this case, they were sitting in a position that was pretty good to shoot. Another awesome tradition of hockey is the rookie lap. And so usually about a half hour before the game, when they come out for warm-ups, a player who's never played an NHL game will get sent out to go skate around on the ice for a minute by themselves and just get a chance to take a few shots and sort of soak up the moment before the rest of the team comes on for warm-ups. So at my camera meeting with the crew that afternoon, I meet with all the operators at about 3:30, so about 4 hours before the game, and we talked a lot about how we want to cover the warm-up lap, how we want to cover a potential goal, and the fact that the parents were going to be in the building. So one of the cameras that I'm fortunate enough to have it's called the ISO camera in TV terms, but what it really is it's like the director's Swiss Army knife, and it's a camera that I can use to point at anything that I want to point it at, or that JT Brown or Edzo wants to point at, or the producer wants to point it at. But the key is that it doesn't shoot game action. I don't need this camera to be able to follow the puck around and capture goals and do the traditional stuff. I can just point this camera at things and just see what we get with it. And so with my ISO operator, I said, here's where the parents are going to be sitting. Make sure you know where that is. And we're going to shoot the parents for the first few times that he's on the ice. And so what I love about our camera crew is they actually took the extra step to go physically find those seats and mark them with tape so that they could practice zipping over before there were fans in the seats, and then they would just know when the parents sat down. And we had looked them up online and kind of had photographs of what we think they looked like, and so we could compare and go, yep, that's actually his parents. But long story short, when the game started, he came out for his first shift, and I had told our ISO camera operator, for the first few shifts, I want you to shoot the parents every time he's on the ice. And then the next few shifts, I was going to have the ISO stay on Yanni for his just to capture some footage of him skating around playing. And so in hockey, for those that aren't aware, players come on the ice, they spend about a minute at a time, and then they go back to the bench and recover, and then they come back out. And so, to my producer Ryan's credit, after about the second time of shooting Yanni on the ice, he's like, dude, I don't need him. Just shoot the parents every time he's on the ice. And so, so for the ISO operator, that's a little bit challenging because when Yanni's not on the ice, he has other players that I ask him to shoot. And then when Yanni comes out, now he's got to go find the parents again. The video team has to adjust the iris so that the camera looks good, the picture looks great. It's a lift for everybody, but they were all doing it. It was great. And so, the moment came and I saw, I'm like, this might be a good opportunity. And sure enough, he went down on that knee and scored that goal. And so, immediately he came right at our handheld camera. So my first cut is, okay, we're going to cut to that celebration. And the next place I'm looking is at the parents, and they're just losing their minds. So cut to the parents, John acknowledges, and we had shown the parents a couple times throughout the broadcast, so it wasn't a surprise of what we were looking at. But John and JT did a great job of talking about that piece, and then kind of going back and checking in on him. And so it's just kind of that full circle of being able to visually tell a story without having to rely on a bunch of graphics or videotape or other stuff. But like, this is a really cool thing for this player to come out and share this with his family.
The separation is in the preparation, as somebody once in Seattle sports said, and I geek out on stuff like this. Not only that moment and watching it back, I think, I have a certain appreciation for the NFL draft recently in Green Bay, when Matthew Golden was picked by the Packers, and how the director and producer allowed that moment to drag out with just visuals only, without any sort of voiceover, letting the sound come up, and it was more powerful that way, as opposed to announcers trying to talk over video of somebody walking down a stage. And so I love hearing about the preparation that went into that one moment, which is, I think, memorable for Kraken fans last season and will be memorable perhaps going forward.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'm a consumer of sports television as well. And so, I try to separate what I do from my fandom and just enjoy games, but I certainly appreciate when other directors and other producers do a great job, and it just enhances the enjoyment of the moment. And it's these things that people at home may never truly understand why they enjoyed it more, but nobody needs to know exactly what we're doing or why we're doing it the way we're doing it, but there's hundreds of decisions that we're making in every moment. And so all I'm trying to do is let the fan know the story of what's going on and support our announcers and support our producers with the best pictures possible.
Well, it's been one of the best broadcasts in the NHL since the start, and you are one of the people responsible for that. So thank you, Patrick. Appreciate the time.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
So there you go. Great story from Patrick Brown there about Yanni Newman and that first goal. I remember watching it in public and then hearing Patrick talk about just the setup that went into capturing that moment on television. It sure is fun and gives you a great respect for what people are doing off the ice, off the field, off the court. It's what we do every week here on Inside the Arena. And you know what? Niko Tamurian will be back inside this arena next week. But for now, David Lee.
You've been listening to Inside the Arena with Niko and Chris. Please subscribe on your favorite platform. Until next time.
Inside the Arena was presented by Snoqualmie Casino and Hotel, Seattle's closest sports book.